Linda had always been a light sleeper. Her ears were finely tuned instruments, almost supernaturally sensitive, she thought sometimes. She was alerted to even the faintest of disturbances. As a child, she would startle quickly because of this, but as an adult, she got used to it a little bit. But this night, her senses tingled all over as she heard and saw something on the baby camera. But before we start, smash the like button and make sure to subscribe if you haven't, and hit that notification bell so that you won't miss any new stories. Linda had always known that her life would change when she brought her first child into the world, but she hadn't been prepared for just how drastically it would affect her. It was a warm summer night, and her daughter, Abigail, had just turned 6 months old. Linda and her husband, Tom, were exhausted from the long day of work and childcare. The sun had set hours ago, casting a veil of darkness over their suburban home. The sleep eluded her that night. Every time she closed her eyes, she saw Abigail's face. Every time she took a breath, she felt the weight of responsibility that came with being a mother. But she couldn't help but feel the acute sense of anxiety that came with caring for such a tiny, fragile being. The moon cast its pale light through the bedroom window, illuminating the room just enough for Linda to see the baby monitor on the bedside table. The device was their connection to Abigail, their reassurance that she was safe and sound in her crib down the hall. Even though it almost never was necessary for Linda, because her hypersensitivity could pick up any minor sound in the house, even through the walls that separated their bedroom from Abigail's room. And this night, Linda really got the feeling that something was not right. Linda glanced at the monitor, noting the green LED light that indicated everything was fine. She had become somewhat obsessed with checking the device, the same way she used to check her phone for missed calls and texts. As her thoughts began to wander, her mind drifting between the realms of consciousness and sleep, she heard it, a sound from Abigail's room. It was faint, barely noticeable above the ambient noise of the house, but Linda's ears picked it up immediately. She tried to dismiss it as her imagination, but the sound persisted. Her heart began to race, and she glanced over at Tom, who was snoring softly beside her. She considered waking him, but hesitated. She didn't want to seem paranoid, especially if the noise turned out to be nothing more than a figment of her overactive imagination. She picked up the baby monitor, holding it close to her ear, straining to hear the sound more clearly. It was still there, but no louder than before. Unable to resist any longer, Linda slipped out of bed. As she stepped out into the hallway, she could hear the sound more clearly. It was definitely coming from Abigail's room, and it was growing louder, more insistent. Her hands trembled as she reached for the doorknob, and she took a deep breath to steady herself before opening the door. The room was dark, but the soft glow of the nightlight revealed Abigail sleeping peacefully in her crib. The sound, however, seemed to have stopped. She took a step into the room, her eyes sweeping the space for any signs of disturbance. Perhaps it had just been her mind playing tricks on her. She stood there for a moment, watching her daughter's chest rise and fall with each breath. She was about to turn and leave when she heard it again, louder this time. The sound was coming from the corner of the room, near the closet. Her pulse quickened once more, and she hesitated for a second before slowly making her way toward the source of the noise. As she approached the closet, she noticed that the door was slightly ajar. The sound was emanating from inside the closet, and it was unlike anything she had ever heard. Linda reached for the closet door, her hand shaking, and gently pushed it open. The light from the nightlight spilled into the small space, revealing a sight that made her gasp. There, nestled among the neatly stacked piles of baby clothes and boxes of diapers, lay a small animal. It looked up at Linda with its big black watery eyes. It was a little innocent puppy, just the cutest little thing. What is this little dog doing here? The dog had floppy ears and a wagging tail. As she watched, it yawned and stretched, unfazed by her presence. Her mind raced, trying to make sense of the situation. She reached out hesitantly, afraid that the pup might be afraid or aggressive, but it seemed to be the exact opposite. As her fingers touched its soft fur, the puppy licked her hand and wagged its tail even more vigorously. A smile broke across Linda's face, and she felt some of her earlier anxiety dissipate. But there were still so many questions. She scooped the little dog up in her arms and carried it out of the room, making sure to close the door behind her. The last thing she wanted was for the puppy to make noise and wake Abigail. She tiptoed back to her bedroom. Linda sighed in relief and set the puppy down on the floor, watching as it explored the room with its tiny, wobbly steps. She knew she should wake Tom and discuss the situation with him, but part of her didn't want to burden him with more stress. She then sent a message to her closest neighbors, asking if they knew anything about the mysterious visitor. As she waited for responses, she considered other possibilities. Could it be a gift from a family member or friend? As the minutes ticked by, the responses began to trickle in. None of her neighbors recognized the puppy. Linda decided to take a more proactive approach. It was now 3 o'clock at night, but Linda's high sensitivity made her wide awake. After ensuring that the puppy was secure in the laundry room with some water and a blanket, she grabbed her laptop and began researching. Hours passed as she scoured the internet for any information that might explain the puppy's presence, but she could not seem to find anything. That's when she decided to take her search outside. She put on something warm and ventured into the street with the puppy. She didn't know what she would find, but her hypersensitivity had put her in an awake state that could not just be turned off. Sleep is not an option. I better make the most of this. She was wandering the empty streets of the suburbs for almost half an hour now, but not a single clue could be found. This is hopeless, she thought after a while. But Linda's hypersensitive ears picked up on the noise. It was a soft, mournful whine that seemed to be coming from a nearby park. Intrigued, and with a growing sense of determination, she made her way toward the sound, clutching the puppy close to her chest. As she approached the park, there was a faint glow emanating from a cluster of trees near the playground. She found the source of the whining, a large dog lying on the ground near the trees. The dog's eyes were filled with sadness. Linda felt a sudden surge of sympathy for the creature, and she cautiously approached, the puppy still in her arms. As she got closer, the dog lifted its head and looked at her, its eyes locking onto the small puppy she carried. It let out another soft whine, and Linda could feel the dog's longing for the little one. Realization dawned on her, and she knew, without a doubt, that this poor dog was the mother of the puppy she had found in her daughter's closet. She was obviously hungry and looked cold. Now that was something that Linda could understand, and that was when she decided it was time for this mom to help the other mom. She let the mother dog and her pup lick each other for a short while, but then she took over. She guided both dogs back to her house and promised that she would take care of them from now on. And while all of this was happening, her daughter Abigail and her husband Tom were still sound asleep. What an adventure! They are going to be so surprised when they wake up, Linda said. When morning came and the family awoke to the sound of barks and whines, the surprise on Tom and Abigail's faces was worth every moment of lost sleep. They welcomed the mother dog and her pup with open arms, marveling at the strange and wonderful twist of fate that had brought them together. Linda explained the whole story to Tom and Abigail, from the mysterious sound in the baby's room to the discovery of the mother dog in the park. They all agreed that the dogs had come into their lives for a reason, and that they were meant to be a part of their family. Together, they named the mother dog Luna and the puppy Bella. Over time, the bond between the family and their new furry friends grew stronger, especially the one between Linda and Luna, two mothers who had found each other in the dark of the night. And Linda's heightened senses, which had once been a source of constant anxiety, now served as a reminder of the incredible journey that had united their unique family.